Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, How to Get 4x Storage Price Performance for Algorithmic Training. This webinar is expected to last for 30 minutes, with roughly 20 minutes of presentation content and up to 10 minutes for Q&A. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A chat box. My name is Derek Burke from Weka.io, and I'm hosting today's webinar, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our two distinguished speakers. Barbara Murphy is the VP of Marketing and Products at Weka and brings over 20 years experience in data storage systems. And Lee Biggenden is co-founder and COO of Nephos Technologies. He has over 15 years experience in matching complex business challenges with game-changing technology. On today's webinar, Barbara will present Weka.io and its unique performance for financial analytics workloads. Then Lee will present Nephos Technologies, solutions and services that are helping customers to transform their data pipelines, as well as sharing his findings on total cost of ownership. This is going to be a short but very informative webinar. So let's kick it off with Barbara and get the ball rolling. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Derek, and welcome to Weka. A quick overview of who we are. We were founded in 2014 with a goal to address the scalability and performance challenges associated with unstructured data at scale. We've enjoyed tremendous success, growing over 6x in 2019, and the momentum continues. We have major strategic investors in storage, networking, and compute who have invested in our technology, including NVIDIA, HPE, Mellanox, and Western Digital. And our customers include some of the largest Fortune 500 companies across multiple industries, including finance, healthcare, manufacturing, and public sector. In fact, 7 of the Fortune 50 customers are using Weka today for their major AI initiatives. And finally, it's important to note that Weka is a software-only product, and we've chosen close relationships with all of the major server vendors, including Hitachi Vantara, HPE, Dell, AWS, and many more. Now, who is Weka? Weka is the storage solution for those who solve big problems. We have built a software solution that delivers low latency performance with a particular emphasis on solving the small file problem, which plagues the finance industry. So let's look at the big problems in finance. Firstly, if there ever was an industry where time is money, financial trading exemplifies this. In fact, today, 75% of all trading relies on some computational algorithms. It's all about faster time to trade and reducing risk associated with trading strategies. And in finance, we know that data is often comprised of billions of tiny files, creating a huge problem for the infrastructure managers. Our customers consistently see 3 major problem areas. Budgets are shrinking, data is growing at an exponential rate, and we suffer from what we call compute densification. In fact, a single NVIDIA A100 has 5x the performance of the first IO 500 supercomputer called Roadrunner, and is now housed in a rack that's 0.1% of the space that the original Roadrunner took up. So think of that, 5x the performance, 0.1 of the space. Now, your question is, how do you get your data into that level of compute densification? We believe you need a fundamentally new design that focuses on maximizing client performance. Introducing Weka for high-value workloads. It is the highest performance as independently validated on many public benchmarks, including STAC, which we will talk about today. We're massively scalable to hundreds of petabytes in a single file system with the ability to have trillions of files in a single directory. And the system is incredibly easy to manage. Lastly, we deliver best economics as we are software defined and can be purchased with your server partner of choice to deliver a total solution. So this is an overview of what Weka looks like in production. You can see that Weka installs a POSIX client on your CPU or GPU-based machines. And here we have some machines running KX Systems KDB+. But we also allow you to access via legacy protocols such as NFS or SMB. The software is layered on top of any x86 server with local NVMe drives. And it presents a single global namespace back to your applications. And when your data sets get too big for your all-flash, Weka has the ability to expand the namespace to exabyte scale by leveraging any S3 compliant object store. And the nice thing is that your data and your applications never lose access to the data. It's always presented as local. And as a side note, it's important to note that Weka is software only that runs both on-premises on standard x86 servers, or we can run in the AWS cloud. And in fact, just last week we announced that we now support AWS Outposts, which is AWS on-premises solution. Now turning to our record-breaking performance, which we want to talk about today. Weka recently submitted an audited STAC benchmark to the STAC Council. And by the way, if you're not familiar with STAC, it's made up of a consortium of banks, brokerage houses, hedge funds, exchanges, and other trading companies just like you. The fully audited STAC benchmarks test real-world financial trading strategies against an end-to-end solution to validate those solutions in a production environment. So you can treat STAC as your trusted advisor who is independent of any of the vendors that have submitted results. Now, specifically, the STAC M3 benchmark measures the performance of high-speed analytics using a time series database. And Weka software was tested in conjunction with HPE ProLiant servers and the KX Systems KDB+ database. And you can see the solution under test ID number here if you want to go to your own STAC submission and get it. Here's a quick view of the solution in case you want to go back in future and compare to other systems. This is the actual full-on build. But now let's get to the results. So, diving into the results, you can see the benchmark has an Antuco and a Kanaga set. And today we're going to focus on Kanaga. The difference is that Kanaga measures multi-year data sets, stressing the I/O and metadata by about 5x the data set size. We ran the entire suite of tests and summed the total time compared to the industry benchmarks for an NVMe over Fabric SAN, an all-flash NAS, and direct attached storage, the common technologies you find to support time series database. Weka set 17 records, 12 on Kanaga and 5 for overall bandwidth results. All of the records we set were on the I/O and metadata intensive workloads, validating our claim of solving the big problem. Now, comparing to the other technologies, we were more than 2x better than the NVMe over Fabric SAN and 6x better than the very expensive Optane-based direct attached server. In fact, that server has a price tag of close to $1 million. And although our customers tell us that our solution is significantly more cost-effective than all-flash NAS, let's assume, for argument's sake, that we're on price parity with the all-flash NAS on a $1 per gigabyte basis. Now, with that, you can see that Weka is 4x better in price performance for the same set of tests compared to the all-flash NAS. Put another way, we deliver you 4x the performance for every dollar you spend on your storage. And that results in further saving in your compute infrastructure as that becomes more efficient. Digging deeper into the results, the volume-weighted bid test is a good test of user scaling that varies the size of the data set. This test executes a 4-hour volume-weighted bid for 100 concurrent clients over 12 days for 1% of the symbols and over a 5-year data set. And so it also ensures there's very heavy overlap among the requests. Again, you can see this is very stressful on the storage system, and the Weka solution outperformed all of the other solutions by over 4x for the all-flash NAS, and frankly, it left the Optane-based direct attached storage in the dust. Now, our last set of comparisons is a multi-year high bid benchmark. and this is a really good test of sequential read performance. The query runs the highest bid price for 1% of the symbols over 5 years. The benchmark is I/O intensive and stresses the storage system significantly in all of its randomness. And again, you can see that Weka's solution outperformed all the other publicly disclosed solutions as the data sets increased from 1 year test to 2 years to 3 years to 5. This is Weka down here, and again, lower is better. And you can see that for the all-flash NAS, as the number of years increased, the impact on it was significant, such that you get this hockey stick effect. And what that means for your users is poor performance and a lot of complaints. So this is my last slide, and I want to leave you with some Weka wows. And the first wow is Weka reduced the runtime window by about 3x for an investment bank who had moved its KDB Plus workloads to the AWS cloud. And it provided the additional benefit of a dev test environment that they could actually run their new test models against real data. And that was with our ability to create snapshots and then be able to clone those snapshots to the other solutions. The next wow is Weka consolidated multiple standalone KDB Plus servers into a single data set on a Weka cluster and improved performance, simplified the workload, and allowed the customer to purchase much cheaper servers going forward. The last wow, Weka replaced another parallel file system, HPC-based, and improved small file performance by about 5x, while providing a proper enterprise-grade solution that offers things like snapshots, backup, recovery, encryption, and security. All of the things that you need in a proper enterprise environment, particularly with sensitive financial information. So that's the end of my presentation. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Derek to present our next guest.
Thanks, Barbara. I love the Weka wows. The STAC performance numbers, well, they were another wow. They really illustrate the competitive edge that the Weka file system can bring to its financial customers. Thank you very much for that. And now to our second speaker, Lee Biggenden from Nephos Technologies. I've got a feeling that there will be another wow moment in Lee's presentation. Over to you, Lee.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks for the intro. As Derek said, my name's Lee Biggenden. I'm one of the co-founders of a data services integrator called Nephos Technologies. Today, I'm going to be speaking to you about how we leverage the Weka I/O platform that Barbara's just introduced to drive significant cost reductions, as well as driving these performance gains that Barbara's running through from a STAC benchmark perspective. Before I get into that, I'm going to give you a short intro into our business, as well as discussing a little bit about some of the challenges that we find on a daily basis with our customers when it comes to storing and processing their data, particularly at scale. So who are we? Who are Nephos? Well, as I said earlier, we're a data services integrator, and like Weka, our goal is to help our customers to solve those complex data problems. We have a 100% focus on data. The target for us is to work with our clients to solve these challenges that they have. Typically through digital or data transformation, and as we look to scale our usage and consumption of data services, a lot of our clients have issues around transitioning from where they are currently to this kind of new data-driven world. And particularly around optimizing the way that they store, process, and protect that data. We are an independent organization. We are consultant-led and 100% focused on data. That combination of independence, of focus, and expertise, as well as our ability to deliver at scale, has led to us having a very a great level of compound growth within the business over the last 4 years in particular. And that focus also gives us a huge amount of customer retention in that sense. We know what we're good at delivering, and we're consistent when we do so. So over the last kind of 8 years, we've developed our own data services framework. So this kind of covers 3 core areas of our business. Ultimately, our belief is that data is driving most things these days within pretty much every organization across every industry, not just financial services. And in order to support that, you need a suitable and usable data services framework. For us, that comes in three areas. One is around data processing and storage, which we're talking about today. So how do we help you drive performance gains, cost reductions, remove those silos and pockets of data that you have all over the place so that you can actually drive some value from your data sets? We work in the space of security and governance. So actually, once we've centralized and consolidated those data sets, how do we make sure that they're governed in the correct way? And that we can comply to things like GDPR, PCI, CCPA type regs. And the last piece is around data services. So, how can we help our clients to support initiatives like AI, ML, deep learning, etc. They're our core areas of focus. Now, today, obviously, we're going to be talking about data processing and storage. But ultimately, we deliver these platforms, these services across different organizations across the world. A bit of a vanity slide there. I guess everyone's got one. All shapes and sizes. Ultimately, the challenges are the same, right? How do we better store, process, protect our data? That's what people want to achieve. So what's the problem? What's the big challenge? Let's start with the data itself. So it's not news to anyone here that data is growing at exponential rates. Barbara's already mentioned that. And these predictions continue to change and grow every day. But regardless, data growth and our desire to drive more value from our data is unstoppable, really. When we look at that data, the lion's share of it is unstructured these days. So it's file data. And more, that data is becoming valuable, right? You see on the screen now that over a third of those data sets is going to drive some value for the business. You could argue that it's probably more than that, to be fair. These things combined mean that ultimately more data is being retained within the business. The more data we have, the more we can mine, the more value we can drive from it. But the challenge is that those traditional infrastructure models struggle to really scale, both in terms of operationally and in terms of cost management. So we want that blend of price and performance. If we look at traditional infrastructure, it's typically quite inefficient at scale. In many, many cases, we see organizations storing at least 5 times more data than they actually need. Often that's a byproduct of the use of replication, of RAID for data protection. You've got primary storage platforms replicated to secondary. It's backed up, it's archived, it's put on a van, it's taken off site. All of this drives up cost and inhibits agility when it comes to scaling those platforms. Historically, people have compromised. They've tried to simplify management, and quite often they put all of their data sets in on a single platform. So either adding file data onto performance storage, and virtual infrastructure onto NAS services. At that point, the price performance balance is misaligned. Someone's compromised at that point. And we end up having the right data in the wrong places, essentially. Our model is slightly different. This slide here illustrates the point a little further. We have different data types with different requirements and different profiles. Historically, trying to get this balance right puts strain on the business in terms of data management, as we've just discussed. Our role as Nephos is to help change that dynamic, really. We want to take advantage of new technology opportunities to reduce cost and increase performance. And when it comes to trying to get a better blend, rather than compromise, what we look to do is create a 2-tier architecture that are integrated effectively. We want to separate performance and capacity. What do we mean by that? Well, in many cases, if we look at your data itself, 20 to 30% of those data sets will be hot, will be active, right? That's the data that requires a high level of performance. The remaining 70 to 80% is, for all intents and purposes, archive. Now, it still needs to be accessible, it still needs to be available, it still needs to be durable and all that good stuff, but it doesn't need to be on high performance infrastructure. It does need to be available. So from a technology perspective, what we look to do is combine a performance tier that copes for that 20 to 30%, and we use Weka IO for that, to give us that super high performance where we need it. But we combine it with a more scalable object storage tier that gives us kind of super durability over our data sets at infinite scale and at low cost. that capacity-based data doesn't need that level of performance. By combining the two, we actually are able to optimize that balance of price and performance. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that might look like. For those of you that aren't familiar with object storage as a concept, it provides limitless scale. There's a reason Amazon have built S3 on this kind of infrastructure, right? It's highly durable, it's low cost, it's highly scalable, and it's a great landing pad for the vast majority of unstructured data. But it does have its limitations. It has no file system. It's not performant as you would need for this kind of, whether it's a quant workload or a data platform or whatever it may be. So by combining the high performance with the high scale of the object here, we, as I say, we get that kind of blend, if you like, in the best of both worlds. To put it into context for you, real world example from a client. What we have here, which you'll see on your screen, is some Weka nodes. Hopefully you can make that out in the top layer of the diagram, connected into a HPC cluster. That's running Weka IO on x86 NVMe infrastructure. As Barbara said, it could be HP, it could be whatever. It's x86 infrastructure, right? That provides file system access to users and services. In this example, we've got 1.3 petabytes of usable there, replicated across 2 data centers. We integrate that Weka IO cluster with an object storage tier. And what we do is we basically use Weka's snap to object capability to push that data down into the object tier. We distribute that data across 3 data centers there, using geo-distributed erasure coding to protect that data at scale. It removes the need for us to duplicate and replicate our data, as well as the need to use tape archiving, off-siting, those sorts of things. We have inherent protection over our data. Our role as Nephos here is to deliver this end-to-end solution. In this particular use case, we also delivered a high-performance network infrastructure as part of that also. So what does it mean? What does it mean commercially for you guys? Well, it's interesting. In this example, this is from an existing customer, they're real life numbers. We are providing here 1.5 petabytes of usable infrastructure based on Weka IO, 5 petabytes of object storage, and the numbers are based on day one costs, i.e. your initial CapEx investment, on a 5-year forecast, i.e. a TCO written over 5 years. We compare that to 2 alternatives. The first is all-flash scale-out. So that's putting all of the data set on a single all-flash tier, no differentiation between that or anything else, no tiering, no data management. The second option in the middle here is using all-flash arrays for the hot data, using a data management tier to then take that data off and effectively archive that into an object storage layer. And the final piece here is Weka plus object, as I've just discussed. Now, in that approach, what we've seen is that compared to all-flash scale out, we're looking at a 71% TCO reduction over that 5-year forecast period. Compared to running all-flash arrays plus object and data management tier, we're able to push that down to 41% TCO reduction over that same 5-year forecast. So what we see here is, and this is just one example, this model combines very nicely the cost reduction, the scalability that you need from that infrastructure, as well as the super high performance that you want to drive that value out of your data sets that Barbara's already been through. So that, for me, that concludes my input into this session for today. So just like to thank you for listening and taking the time out, and I'm going to pass the baton back over to Derek to close out for us. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Lee. That was an excellent overview, and the wow moment for me is definitely these total cost of ownership numbers. Thank you very much for sharing that insight. I would just like to do a very quick summary of what we've heard so far, and then we'll move to the Q&A. So Just as a reminder, Weka is a software-defined high-performance parallel file system. It is delivering epic performance for algorithmic trading with 4x the performance of alternative all-flash NAS solutions, and it's already enabling many financial customers to accelerate their analytics workloads. Nephos delivers support solutions and consulting services that enables companies to tackle their most complex data problems. And Nephos already delivers the Weka file system, flash storage infrastructure, object storage infrastructure, consultancy support and services to many financial customers. And those customers are taking advantage of the combination of Weka and Nephos to basically increase performance for their applications and also lower their TCO and improve their profitability. So that's your summary. Just before we move to Q&A, I'd like to remind everyone that when we advertised this webinar, we offered the opportunity to enter a raffle to win a year of free coffee. At the end of the webinar, we will get together and look at the attendee list and choose a winner at random. So look out for an email. If you're the winner, you'll receive an email to let you know. So look out for that. We do have a couple of questions that have come in during the presentation. Just have a quick look here. The first one looks like it's for you, Barbara. It says, we use direct attached storage today for both performance and resiliency. It's resilient because we have multiple copies of our data. I'm impressed with the Weka performance numbers, but would my resiliency be reduced with Weka FS?
Well, thank you, Derek. Great question. So first of all, apart from the fact that you've already seen the numbers on direct attach, you're always going to have a limitation on your performance, particularly when you're dealing with a large number of clients. The data I showed you today had 100 clients working against a direct attach server. With the same 100 clients running against Weka, you saw, a 16x improvement in performance. So taking the performance aside, because the question was really about resiliency, understand that having multiple copies of your data, especially on NVMe, is tripling your cost of ownership of that data. And there's absolutely no reason to do that. With Weka, we have a patented distributed erasure coding schema that actually is extremely high performance and extremely resilient. We can survive up to 4 independent server nodes failing at exactly the same time, and your data is still fully protected. That's actually probably the strongest in the industry. Most people only go to an N+2. So fundamentally, you have better performance with a shared file system on NVMe with Weka. You have a better resiliency than you're going to get because each of those individual servers, while you have 3 copies of your data, you're paying 3x the price for that benefit, and you also have to have the effort of copying the actual data around the place, which is extremely cumbersome and difficult for people to manage. So what we show is that, and I think I did this in my wow moments, is by moving to a shared file system and allowing all of the servers to directly attach to that shared file system, you get so many more efficiencies than you can ever get by just depending on local direct attach. And as I said, we can give you dramatically better performance as the numbers have validated.
Fantastic. Thanks, Barbara. Okay, we've got another question here. This one looks more as though it's like for you, Lee. It says, we're moving to an OpEx model. Are there any managed services or cloud-like consumption models?
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, so there's a couple of options that we can deliver in that way. One is, as you say, around managed services. So we can deliver the whole stack as a singular managed service for customers on their premise. So that's one option for you. The other is actually, and I think Barbara mentioned this earlier, Weka has a strong time with the likes of AWS. So not only can we deliver that on-premises managed services, but we can extend that capability into the public cloud as well with Amazon. So in either case, we can drive that on a consumption model for organizations so that, obviously it lightens the load a little bit from a CapEx perspective.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Okay, I can see that we're out of questions and we're also in our 30 minutes or just on our 30 minutes now. So I'll wrap up with a call to actions. Please, if you would like more information, feel free to reach out to the Nephos Technologies team. You can see the email on the slide here. You can also request a free trial of Weka FS by clicking on that URL, or you can get more info from the Nephos Technologies website or the Weka.io website. And with that, I'll thank you very much for attending today's webinar. We hope you found it informative. Goodbye and stay safe.